Hey guys, welcome back to the Sal Pitera channel. So, you're planning that trip to Cuba on a cruise ship. Well, now is the perfect time to do it, but there's some things you're going to need to know before you set sail, and we're going to tell you all about them in this video. But before we begin, we are almost at 10,000 subscribers. And at the 10,000 mark, we're going to be giving away some Olive Garden gift cards, as well as something really cool that we're going to talk about during this video. So please, before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell notification next to it, and that'll let you know when we put up new videos. And we'll be back to tell you all about traveling to Cuba right after this. Welcome back, guys. So you're planning that trip to Cuba on board a cruise ship. There are some things you need to know. Most people believe that traveling to Cuba is something that's done freely now. And well, that is true, but it's also not true. While it's easier to go to Cuba than ever before, you do have to meet certain requirements in order to make Cuba one of your ports of call. Before we get into those requirements, let's talk about why Cuba has been a no-go for most America over the years, and what's in store for you when you visit. Cuba is a Caribbean nation about 90 miles off the southern coast of the United States. In fact, it's exactly 90 miles as the crow flies, or in this case we'll say as the seagull flies, from Key West, Florida, another popular cruise port that we'll talk about in another video. Cuba is home to about 11 million people. Its capital city of Havana has a population of 2.1 million Cubans. As far as size, the total area of Cuba is 42,426 square miles, which is about 109,884 square kilometers, making it the 105th largest country in the world. Cuba's official language is Spanish. For many years, since March 14, 1958, and formally signed into law by President Kennedy in 1962, the United States has had an embargo against Cuba. This meant that U.S. citizens were not able to freely visit the Cuban nation or purchase goods from them either. The embargo left Americans with a sense of wonder in what the Cuban economy and island life was like, as well as its secret relationship with one of Cuba's most famous products, the Cuban cigar. President Obama and President Trump have recently changed the embargo that has lasted for decades, now allowing U.S. citizens to visit Cuba and bring some of the nation's products back to the United States. But there really is some things you need to know before you visit Cuba. Before we begin, let me start by saying the information in this video is accurate as of today, the day I'm posting the video. Now that being said, I would check with your cruise line as well as the United States State Department to make sure it's accurate for your cruise just before you set sail. In fact, I would call the day before I left for the cruise just to make sure no last minute changes have happened. Cruising to Cuba is relatively new, so you just want to make sure that come time for your cruise, everything is the same and you're all set to go. Okay, so you want to visit Cuba on your cruise. You're told that visiting is now allowed. Well, again, yes and no. You can't just board the cruise ship, stop in Cuba, and get off and explore. In order to legally visit Cuba, you have to meet certain requirements. The good news is Carnival Cruise Lines has worked really hard to make these requirements an easy process for you. According to Carnival, there'll now be 4 cruise ships making their way to Havana. Carnival Paradise will continue to make her way from Tampa, and starting in 2019, Carnival Sensation, Sunrise, and Sunshine will set sail from Miami, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, and Charleston. Carnival says that folks from the U.S., including U.S. residents who were born in Cuba, and people from other countries will be able to travel on board Carnival ships to Cuba. There are 2 ways to become eligible to make Cuba your port of call. The first way is to meet one of 12 categories for eligible travel, and here they are. 1. Visiting family in Cuba. 2. Official business of the United States government, foreign governments, and certain intergovernmental agencies. 3. Journalistic activity. 4. Professional research and professional meetings. 5. Educational activities, including people-to-people exchange programs. Now, this is the big one we're going to talk about in a minute. 6. Religious activities. 7. Public performances, clinics, workshops, athletic or other competition and exhibitions. 8. Support for the Cuban people. 9. Humanitarian projects. 10. Activities for private foundations or research or educational institutes. 11. Exploration, importation, or transmission of information or informational materials. And lastly, 12. Certain authorized export transactions. Now, Carnival says that one of the easiest ways to become eligible is simply to purchase a Cuba Shore excursion from Carnival. They do offer a variety of shore excursions that fulfill the, quote, educational people-to-people requirement. Another way to become eligible is to obtain a license issued by the OFAC, which is the United States Office of Foreign Assets Control, though the cruise line recommends its shore excursions. Now, normally, I wouldn't endorse buying a shore excursion from the cruise line, but in this case, I think it's the fastest and easiest way to meet the governmental requirements. Now, travel documentation is also quite different than a normal cruise, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. Okay guys, before we talk about documentation and what's needed in order to get into Cuba, I wanted to talk to you for a second about our channel. Last week, my wife and I went on a little vacation to Put-in Bay, Ohio. It's a little island about 60 miles northwest of Cleveland. And in the summertime, it really becomes a little tropical resort, very similar to Key West. Well, while we were there, I found a statue of a mermaid, which fits great in my office, and I'll show it to you right now. It stands about 3 feet high, and she is awesome. She'll be a permanent addition, or at least for now, to my office. But along with her, we also found a little sister. She stands about 1 foot high, and I'm giving her away to one of you when our channel reaches 10,000 subscribers. Now, we're almost there. We're almost at the 10,000 mark. The only thing you have to do in order to be entered into winning this statue is be subscribed and to have commented or shared our video on your social media. You'll automatically be eligible. When we hit 10,000, we'll be giving that away, as well as we're also giving away some Olive Garden gift cards at 10,000 as well. And then, of course, we have a long way to go, but when we hit 100,000 subscribers, I'm giving away a free Carnival cruise. So make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, and then hit that little bell notification, and that will let you know when we post new videos, and you'll automatically be subscribed and be eligible to win our mermaid. Now, let's get back to documentation as you're going to Cuba. Now again, you're going to want to check with your cruise line before you leave for your cruise to make sure there's no last minute changes. But as of today, you're definitely going to need a passport in order to visit Cuba. A valid passport is required for all Cuba cruises. And remember, the passport also has to be valid for 6 months beyond your cruise date. Birth certificates, driver's license, and passport cards will not be accepted. Again, they won't be accepted. I can't stress that enough. And even though I'm sure we're going to have people put in the comments that they will, I promise you they won't. So make sure you have that valid passport. It can take time to get a passport, so don't forget, make sure if you're applying for a new one, give yourself plenty of time, or if you're renewing one, give yourself plenty of time for that as well. Don't wait till last minute. You'll also need a visa, but most cruise lines, including Carnival, make getting the visa very easy. The Cuban government requires that all guests have Cuban visas. Which type of visa you'll need depends on certain factors, including why you're traveling to Cuba, as mentioned in the list earlier. The good news is that for all guests on Carnival, the process will be relatively easy. Almost anyone can enter Cuba utilizing a tarjeta turística. That means tourist card in Spanish. When you cruise with Carnival, you can buy this directly from the cruise line for $75 per person. They'll automatically add it to your onboard Sail and Sign account. There's a good chance this card is the one you'll need, but if you were born in Cuba or you're traveling to Cuba for specific reasons, you might need to get your own non-tourist visa from the Cuban government. Cuban-born guests need to request a visa directly from the Cuban embassy or use a Cuban passport to get in the country. The cruise line cannot help you with this. This is something that you will have to do on your own. Okay, guys, I hope you have a great time on your Cuban vacation on board a Carnival Cruise Line ship or other cruise line of your choice. Cuba is a wonderful country. Not only are you going to be able to smoke those Cuban cigars, you can even bring some home now, but you'll also get to visit their great culture, all the old cars, the fantastic food, and most importantly, the Cuban people are a phenomenal people. So enjoy your Cuban cruise, and we'll see you on the next video.